Welcome, everyone, to the What Never Was lore explanation. For those of you who have not heard or played What Never Was, it is an episodic adventure game written by Ake Halgren, which I would highly recommend you play prior to watching this video. That being said, at the time of this writing, only the first episode has been released, with the next one in line being worked on as I type. Due to the short nature of the first episode, I won't have a lot of concrete evidence, so parts of this will be more speculation than normal. And of course, I will be discussing spoilers. Ye be warned. We begin this tale with a narrative of the current situation. We play as Sarah Elizabeth Wright, a 19-year-old college student from the Biology Institute of AH, who is traveling to her grandfather's house in the fictitious town of Whittington, England. Unfortunately, this trip is not a joyous occasion, as we learn later that her grandfather, Howard James Wright, is recently deceased. Sarah and her mother are going there to gather belongings and remove possessions, possibly due to the house being sold. To top things off, Sarah's mother has just called to inform her that she will be there alone, as unfortunately something has come up, preventing her from attending. We're not given a reason, but I do have a few theories that we will discuss a little bit later. Upon hearing this news, Sarah attempts to argue using the moral high ground with her mother, that they owe it to him, the grandfather. But it is a moot point, and eventually, Sarah gives up. There's not much context given to us in this short scene, so to flesh out the situation a bit more, I reached out to the creator to ask a few questions. Of course, anything story related or tied in with the next release was not explained for obvious reasons. However, here's what I learned. Sarah's mother is a single parent, which according to my speculation would cause her to have to work a lot, and this is the reason she cannot make it. This being the case, and with the clues seen at the house later, we know that Sarah either lived with her grandparents or spent most of her childhood there while her mother was away working. The relationship between Sarah and Howard was a close one, and with her mother not able to attend, Sarah is left to process her emotions by herself. Not much else is said about this opening. It's to the point, and it sets the tone for the emotions we see and feel when we arrive at the house. After the ambience of the opening scene fades to silence, we hear the audio cues of Sarah's arrival to her grandfather's attic. Before she begins her emotional task, she grips a charm of sorts in her hand. Obviously given to her by Howard, it represents the final bond the two had. As she lifts her head to view the room, we get a good look at Howard's makeshift study and clearer picture of Howard as a character. A simple yet adventurous man, Howard was a world traveler, possibly spending his younger years roaming the continents, and then finally settling down when he met the love of his life, who bore him his only child, Sarah's mother. In the room, we find Howard's desk, stacked with books and papers from various subjects of study. I can surmise that he spent most of his time at this desk, by the position and angle of which it sits relative to the single window of the room. Continuing to look around, we see more books piled in various areas of the room. Even though it looks like chaos, there's a feeling of organization. Accompanying a few of the smaller piles of books is a large globe towards the back of the room. Across from that, in the back corner, is the grandfather clock Sarah's mother mentioned in their phone call. One note that we will talk about later is that the clock does not have a traditional face. Where a normal clock would have an hour and a minute hand, this clock has 4 hands. Other than that, at a glance, everything seen here seems to be well cared for, an indicator of Howard's character. In fact, from the creator, we learn that Howard represents the opposite personality of Sarah's mother. In my discussion with Mr. Halgren, he states, she, Sarah's mother, is the opposite of Howard, who is a dreamer and an explorer, having a very neat and organized life. I know this doesn't really add much to the story right now, but it is good to know as it may provide pieces to character development later on. As Sarah moves about the room, she will eventually come across a box of her personal belongings. This box being here tells us that she and her mother lived in this house at one time or another, and more than likely moved out in Sarah's early teen years. This is absolute speculation, of course, and has not been confirmed by the creator. Finally, next to the box of Sarah's things, we find a tape recorder with a note that says, "Play me."
Hello, this is Howard James Wright with a message for my granddaughter, Sarah Elizabeth Wright. So if anyone else is listening, they can start off immediately, please. Sarah, if you are listening to this, then it means well, it means I'm gone. But I don't want you to be too sad about it. That's just the way life goes sometimes. So, chin up, my little pixie. Remember our grand moments. All the adventures we had when you were a little one and I wasn't such a cranky old man. I know you have questions for me. It's true I kept secrets from you and your mother, but there were good reasons. There are things in this world greater than ourselves, and I needed to protect you from them. I didn't want either of you to face the dangers that I've had to... I never wanted to place such a burden on your shoulders, but now it's unavoidable. Pixie, I need your help, but I can't just tell you. I have to show you. You will need to see for yourself. This world is full of secrets. From the tallest tree to the deepest river, in every breath of wind and every dancing flame. All you have to do is look. Goodbye, Sarah. I love you very much.
With this message, the simple task of moving possessions has become a question that must be answered. But the answers we find only lead to more questions. Before I begin with those, though, I must state that a majority of this explanation is pure speculation, as I said before. I have done a lot of independent research on my own to connect the dots that the creators left us. But with that, let's take a trip down the rabbit hole, shall we? Scattered across the room are journal entries written by Howard. There are 5 in total, along with a picture of a mosque in Egypt. Howard's journey starts in Hawaii, in a small village known as Pahala, at the base of Mauna Loa, the largest of the 5 volcanoes that form the island. He is searching for something, but the clues he leaves about it are very vague. He talks about a secret held by Pele, the goddess of fire in the Hawaiian religion. Specifically, he notes that the alchemical symbol of fire is etched into the natives' doorways of this village. It makes sense that it would connect to the goddess of fire, but Howard seeks more. He mentions a crest that he seeks, but nothing more than that. We get a little more context by looking at the page shown next to the text entry. The page contains 2 symbols. One, the alchemical symbol of fire, inside of which is a symbol of flame. I can only assume that the flame symbol is the crest that Howard seeks, as he never mentions a crest going forward in his journals. The next journal entry finds Howard in South America, climbing Pariacaca, the highest mountain of Peru. He mentions the similarity between the Incan god of water, Pariacaca, and the previous mentioned Pele, goddess of fire, in that they have both been laid to rest on the top of mountains. This subtle clue could be nothing, however, potentially, if Howard is going to the resting place of deities, he must be looking for something of significant power. Once again, Howard finds 2 symbols representing water. The first, the alchemical symbol, and another that he has not seen in any other culture or dialect. With this knowledge and the experience he has had in Hawaii, he is sure that the remaining symbols hold significance and share ties. Of course, the journal entry is vague like the last, so not much more is learned. China is where the next journal entry takes place. Fusang, although not mentioned in the journal's text, is the deity Howard is searching for in hopes of finding a connection. Something to note about Fusang is that this is the only deity that is not in human form. In Chinese mythology, Fusang refers to a mystical tree of life, as well as a mysterious island in the Far East. This leads to some speculation, but I'm going to come back to that. Not much is said about the expedition in China, however, as he closes the journal entry, he is cut short, leading us to believe that something has happened. We get a better look at that in the next entry. Lastly, on this page, we see the symbol that represents the tree, as well as the alchemical symbol for Earth. Things begin to move quickly as we learn that a necklace was found in China, and it has led Howard to the continent of Africa, specifically the country of Egypt. Howard mentions receiving an anonymous piece of mail that has contributed immensely to the success of this endeavor, and things seem to be lining up. However, once again we find an alchemical symbol in partnership with another symbol that both represent the element of air. Of course, like others, the entry is still vague and not much can be gathered from it. It is noteworthy that the god Shu is represented by this entry. Shu is the Egyptian god of air and ties a few theories I have together. Regardless, this is the final entry of his journey. There is another page of the journal we find, but I'm going to hold on to that for the next segment. Alright, now for my speculation of what this could all mean. And once again, as a disclaimer, these theories are my own. I have no idea if I'm right or wrong. I did not ask the creator any questions about the plot or received any hints as to what any of these clues mean. So with that said, let's dig through my theory. Most of my speculation comes from the real lore of the deities tied to each element, starting with Fusang. Remember how I mentioned that Fusang is not only a mystical tree but also a reference to a Far Eastern land? Well, one account states that Emperor Shi Huang sent an expedition of around 3,000 convicts to such a place in the Far East. It was also called Fusang. Those convicts were sent there as a sacrifice to a volcano god who held something known as the Elixir of Life. A volcano god. Does that sound familiar? Indeed, it could be referring to Pele in Hawaii. Although nothing in Pele's lore talks about the elixir, it does mention an epithet that refers to the goddess as Pele Hanoa Mea, Pele of the sacred land, which further ties Fusang and Pele together. Looking at Shu, the Egyptian god of wind and air, we see that he is depicted as carrying an ankh, the symbol of life. Could it be that Howard is in search of something that gives immortality? One thing that shakes my speculation is that nothing I could find about Paryakaka mentions anything about immortality or an elixir of life. Even as that is the case, there's further evidence that ties my theory together: the alchemical symbols. Without jumping too deep into it, the four elements can be broken down or used to create what is known as the Tria Prima, which are used to create what is known as the Philosopher's Stone, an alchemical substance used for rejuvenation or in an attempt to achieve immortality. Once again, this is a shot in the dark, as these symbols could simply be used just to tie the context of each deity to the correct element of which they represent. Since there are always two symbols, the alchemical one could be shown to translate the other. Once again, I can neither confirm nor deny any of my speculations until further episodes of the narrative are released. Before I begin, this is all spoilers in regards to the game's primary puzzle, so I recommend you play it once again before you listen to this part if you've gotten this far. Moving back to the globe, we see each deity is represented at its geographical location as well as with its elemental symbol. Taking clues from the message Howard left us prior to his death, we can put together a simple logic puzzle. He uses each element in a sentence in a very specific order, and if we press the corresponding symbols on the globe in that order, it will reveal the key we need to continue. After we enter the correct sequence, a small compartment opens at the top of the globe. Taking the item inside, we realize it is the second half to the necklace we held in the beginning of the game. Magic surges through the pieces as we hold them closer together, and the pieces join to form what we learn is referred to as an elfstone. This is the same item shown and discussed in the final journal entry we find. This elfstone or trollstone is similar in use to the Seeing Stone from the Spiderwick Chronicles, although its creation and complexity is different. Holding our eye to the stone in the middle, we see what was previously invisible. Searching online, I can find similar mystical objects referred to as hagstones, essentially a stone with a natural hole in the middle that can be used for things such as protection, healing, and the ability to see the Fae or fairies. At this point, I have no idea how this ties into my speculation previously, but I am interested to see where it goes. Using the stone allows us to solve the remaining puzzle needed to progress. A special lockbox is revealed to have a hidden code that gives us the key to the grandfather clock. Next, matching the alchemical symbols with their symbol counterparts to correctly line up the hands on the clock activates what I can only guess is fairy magic. Blue light begins to emanate around us, and the world disappears in white light. Sarah tells us what has happened, as well as her thoughts in her closing monologue. No matter the outcome, we are in for an adventure, and as more episodes are released, I will return to continue diving into this lore. I want to say thanks to all who contributed to this video, especially to Mr. Halgren, who shared for my enthusiasm in this project. Other names to mention are Corbin Hill for his audio work, and Slavis for proofreading and error correction. These videos would not happen without them. I also want to say thank you if you're still watching. Let me know in the comments below if you have a different idea of what all this means. I'm interested what I may have missed in my research. Also, if you have a game you would like to add to the ever-growing lore list, throw it in the comments below. We're always looking for suggestions. And with that being said, I hope to see you all in the next video. Until then, goodbye.